Hey everybody, it's Ben in Beta, and today, I have a very, very special guest on the show, and it is a legend in the detailing industry, even though I know he hates hearing that, but it's somebody who's definitely has already left his mark on the detailing industry, and it'll be there for a long, 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 long time, and that is Yvan Lacroix.
Thanks for having me, Ben. And let me preface this whole thing with I have really bad connection issues. I'm in the middle of nowhere in Florida, so there might be a lag here and there. Just telling the folks that we'll do our best not to have a lag.
It's this internet stuff, you just never know how it's going to go. That's right. So again, thanks for being on. Appreciate it. And we have a couple different things to talk about tonight. I have a couple things sitting here that are really new, and so in fact they're so new that the release date is coming very soon. So as of this airing, they'll be released. But I got them a little bit early, and I got to play around with a little bit. And I will have a sort of first impressions video of these, and then long term reviews as well. But this is your new cordless, cord free, I think is actually the correct term, right? Polishers right here. So that's kind of cool. And I know you have a bunch of other stuff that's released late, just recently too. You had the wax that just came out. There's also the pad washer. I don't know if that's been released yet, but the pad washer is coming or will be coming soon or something like that, right? So that's something you've talked about in the past. So there's lots of products that are coming. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, a little bit about like how you come up with all these really interesting and super innovative products in the industry. We have this new polisher, right? This is brand new to the market. The big thing here is normally when you put on one of these batteries, there's no place to put it on the end here. This is where it's supposed to go. That's where it goes. It's always been that way. But you've come up with a new and innovative place to put that battery, which is in the middle. Maybe talk a little bit about what just led to the design of this specifically for this polisher, and then we'll get into like how you come up with products and things like that, and why you design the way you design.
So when cordless polishers started coming out about 10 years ago, I really liked the idea of a cordless polisher, but I hated the balance of them. And I always went back to my corded polisher because they were uncomfortable to use. It felt like a stopgap measure. So about 5 years ago, I started playing around with what if I build my own? And that's what you have in front of you. So that's 5 years of design. And the first ones were hand built in my daughter's garage and worked from there. So tried many different battery styles, placements, locations to get that balance. And the reason we're calling them cord free tools is we've taken a corded tool and freed it of the cord. It has the same balance, the same weight as a corded tool, just as if you just cut the cord off. In terms of the battery itself, I wanted to stay away as much as possible from a orphan battery, as I call it. There are some companies that they'll have, three different battery operated tools and they have three different batteries. And none of those batteries fit anything else other than that one tool. Originally, I wanted to use a Milwaukee battery. Come to find out that both Milwaukee and DeWalt do not want you to use their battery shape. Whereas Makita is like, we'll give you a hug and say, please use our battery shape. So Makita it is. So we're using a Makita style battery. But if you have DeWalt or Milwaukee batteries, you can buy adapters. I think they're like $15 on Amazon that you slide it into the tool, slide the other battery on, and you're good to go. In the development process, I tried all sorts of different shapes and sizes of batteries. My favorite was if you've ever looked at a Lotus Elise without the body on it, it has sort of an X shape in the center, and then the body is draped over it. That was the shape of the tool, and the battery was U-shaped and dropped down over that center frame or backbone. It didn't bulge. It looked really smooth. It was beautiful. But the problem with that was we had an orphan battery, and secondly, the balance with the battery on top is actually better, which seems weird, but the battery being left to right, because I also tried a battery in line with the tool, one that went in at a 45-degree angle, so it sat a little lower. But the left to right placement, even though it's ugly, it actually acts like someone on a trapeze, or with the balance beam and having the long pole, so that left to right balance is better. And I don't know if you've tried the tools yet. I know you have them, but don't know if you actually went out and polished on something. But they feel just like a corded tool, and the battery is not in the way of your vision. It's not, once you start polishing, it disappears basically.
I've not had a chance to polish anything yet. It's been one super cold in Utah for the last few weeks, and so I haven't really done too much of that. I do have a pretty big plans for these on my wife's vehicle, which will be a little bit later in the year in May. But I'm going to try these out in a couple of different ways, I think, just to, again, get initial impressions of them. But what I would say, just from balance wise, putting the batteries on, trying the tool out, the balance is very good. It does make a lot of sense. And you can tell that you're not going to have to use any kind of pressure to be able to use the tool. And I think that's great as well. And then, the other things you did too is you have your rotary, which I know you love. You have your DA, and you chose the 25 millimeter DA. And I know that's kind of always a point of contention in the industry as well, of should you do 15 or even smaller in some cases, or 21 or 25. And I know I've heard your rationale for that before, but maybe not everybody else has. So why 25 versus 21, 15 or something else?
Yeah, so the reason I went with 25 is, for me, a DA is for cutting. Even though it is a jack of all trades, etc., I like a DA for cutting. The longer the stroke gives you a better cut. The thing that people don't realize as well, though, is the longer stroke gives you a better finish. You have less chance of micro marring with a long stroke than you do with a 15 or a 21. In the R&D process for our corded tools, we tried, a 28, a 30, a 35. Those got a little out of hand. Whereas the 25 was the best compromise, if I could put it that way, in terms of getting the best performance, the best finish, but at the same time, not having any compromises in terms of weight or vibration, etc. So 25 it is. The outside of the US or outside of North America, we do have a 15 and 21. And that is simply because the European and Australian distributors didn't think a 25 would sell in their area. So we don't have it in North America, but we do have it in Australia and in Europe and the EU, or the UK, sorry.
They can always go down under if you want to get those other ones, right? So super cool. A couple other questions I have for you now. So we talked a little bit about how you got arrived at this design in general for the polishers, but let's talk about how you think about. So people may not know this. So let me back up a little bit. But by day, I'm a product manager, and I've been a product manager for like the last 5 or 6 years. Mostly digital kind of products is what I'm a product manager for. But I'm always interested in how people go about creating a design for something and getting the right design to the right market, at the right time. And so that's kind of what I want to know next. When you go about developing a new product, one, how do you choose the product? And then what's the process generally look like? How long does it often take? And is it different for, say, something like, a new version of Incredible Suds, or just the first version of it, or app, or, some kind of a mechanical tool? Like, is the process the same or different? And I'm really curious about some of that.
So the product between a chemical and a tool is very different in terms of development. The tool is a lot more hands-on for me, uh, whereas the product or the liquid development or the chemical development is working with chemists, working with product formulators to get it right. And when it comes to a tool, for me, that's easy. I've been in tool R&D since the 80s. I used to work for Porta Cable. I worked for 3M. So, that was an easy one for me. The chemicals, they're a little different. First of all, something like a soap, like Incredible Suds, you tell the chemist what you want and it becomes easy because they, they already know what they're doing when it comes to a soap. So it's not that much of a stretch for them. But then it comes down to, okay, how do you want it to perform? Why do you want it to perform that way? How do you want it to smell? And by the way, the smell is the last thing we deal with because the fragrances and colorants can affect the formula. There's some fragrances that would make it separate. There's some fragrances that would make it, go weird or rot over time and change scent. So not a good idea. So the fragrance is the last thing you try to incorporate into the formula. You don't start off saying, okay, I want it to smell like grapes. but how are we going to make the rest of the soap? It's the other way around. How do we make the soap? And then, oh, we could choose between these 3 scents that didn't affect the formula. We went with grape for incredible suds. The gestation period for a chemical like that can be very short or it can be very long. And for us, on average, it's about 2 years for developing from first concept to ready to sell, with the testing in between. And when we do testing, we have test sites around the world. And because, it might work great in Utah, it might work great in Quebec, it might work horribly bad in Florida, or it might be horrible in Europe, in South America, in the Middle East, in Australia. So we have testers around the world and we make sure that the products work in all environments. The other aspect, you've got the C6 app on the table there. That's something where we developed it from zero. There was nothing like it on the market, and it comes from, sparks from an idea. And that idea for me, just like the cordless polishers, I didn't quite like them. I like the idea of them. Same thing with the app. There's primer polishes out there, and I've liked the idea of a primer polish, but I didn't like the way it was executed by other people, meaning that they leave something on the surface, and when they leave it on the surface, then your coating is bonding to that. From my knowledge of coatings, your coating bonds best to clean paint. Doesn't have to be scratch free, but it has to be clean. And that's where the app comes in. And working with the chemist on that, one of the things we discovered along the way is that tea tree oil just happens to be a great paint cleaner. And so that's why it smells the way it does. There's no additional fragrances in it. It's just the tea tree oil that gives it that characteristic smell. But so no one else is using tea tree oil. We tried one with a lot more abrasives than it has there. We tried one with more solvents, less solvents, more oils, less oils, et cetera, and that's where we come up. The app was about a 3.5 year R&D process. So
If I were going to ask a question specifically then about the chemical side of things, what chemical surprised you the most in terms of maybe what was the easiest one you've ever developed, and then what one maybe like completely surprised you and it was just super hard, like it worked here and then it didn't work in Florida, or it didn't work in South America, or, or whatever, and you like really had to struggle to get it to work the way you needed it to. Like I think that's something that would be interesting to me. Which is easy and which is really hard.
So C6 Mist was the one that gave us the most headaches in terms of developing it, because I wanted a pure drying aid with gloss enhancers, but that didn't leave much protection behind. Basically, we didn't want to alter the characteristics of the coating that it was going on. If you use something like ceramic gloss, the beading that's left behind when you use it as a drying aid is the beading of ceramic gloss for the next couple months. It's not your coating shining through. Whereas with C6 Mist, we wanted the proper lubrication for the towel, so we don't want to be scratching the paint. We also wanted something that when you spray it on, it actually dissipates the water and does make it easier to dry. So it's a drying lubricant and a drying aid at the same time. And slight gloss enhancers, but without leaving a sealant behind that's going to last for months. C6 Mist is something you can use every week on your car to wash it, and it's not going to accumulate. Where something like ceramic gloss over time accumulates, something like quick beads over time accumulates. They're not that bad. There are some products out there that if you use them every week, you end up with a really odd finish on your vehicle that it seems like it's contaminated, even though it isn't. It has all these, you have too much of a buildup. Whereas C6 Mist, we have no buildup. But getting the drying lubrication part of it with the gloss enhancers without a durable sealant was actually difficult. If you want to make it a durable sealant, that's easy. If you don't want to make it a durable sealant and you don't want to alter the beading of the coating, that was more of a challenge for the chemists. And then, as far as easy ones, the soap was a slam dunk. Same thing with the tire dressing. There's not many variables you can do when it comes, especially the tire dressing. You vary the fragrance, you vary the uh, the gloss effect of it. For me, I wanted a tire dressing that after you put it on, it's dry to the touch and it's not going to sling. That it can be applied easily with a brush, or a foam applicator or a microfiber, or sprayed on the tire. However you want to apply it, it's going to work. But the whole goal behind any of the products is, first of all, user safety, efficiency, and joy of using it. If you're using a product that makes your nose hairs curl, or yes, I know, iron remover, but you know just products that are very nasty. Like there's some APCs that you spray them on a tire and you can't help but cough. It's just, as soon as you get a whiff of it, you're coughing. There are ways to make products safer and more user friendly. Yes, it might cost a little more. An example, Incredible Suds. Even though it only has a pH of 8.5, it cleans as well, if not better, than some dedicated pre-soaks or pre-foams, because of the active surfactants and the way it's built. We're working on modifying it a little bit so it's not as thick, but right now we haven't been able to do it. So we're still working on that. And when the chemist can get us to a formula that works as well as the Incredible Suds or better, but at the same time is a little thinner, then we'll make the switch.
Definitely, it is a little thick sometimes, but it does work really well and it smells really good. So you're working to make it even better, which is great. And I think that's another piece of the product development life cycle, right? It's if you can make a product better for a reasonable price, it makes sense to try to do that. So I think you constantly are seeing that too. And another thing that's great, and you've said this before too, like I love the House of Rags as well. I love all the different products, but they have now so many that it makes it hard sometimes to go in there and make a choice on what it is you really want to use, versus like staying within a product lineup. And I think that's really cool. It can be both good and bad for somebody like a DIYer who wants to try lots of different stuff. It's kind of cool because I can grab something from this brand and compare it to that one, and that's great. And I guess if you're a full-time detailer, you might find something you like and just get in the gallons, and that's cool too. But it can become overwhelming for somebody brand new coming in going, where do I start with all these things? There's 15 different soaps to choose from. And it's even worse when it's in the same product lineup, right? Like, chemical guys, again, they have some really great stuff, but holy moly, there's a lot of different choices there. And I don't know really which one's different from the other one. And it may just be that one smells different. I don't even know. So it's interesting.
Yeah. So for us, we wanted, or the whole DIY system is based around what Sylvie and I did in our shops. And when you have employees, you need the most simplistic system possible. The less decisions an employee has to make in the day, the better quality they will produce and the happier they will be. Because if someone is an employee, it's because they don't necessarily want to make decisions. When you own a business, decisions are what you do. But from there, wanted a very simple system, products that just simply work. They're fun to use, they're economical, and they get the job done. The whole, even though we call it DIY detail, the principle behind it was to have fun, detailing your car. But at the same time, for the professional detailer, it has to be efficient, it has to be effective, it has to be not only effective but time effective. And so that's what we worked on the system to make everything work easily, that you can put it in the hand of an employee that's never detailed before, give them a basic instruction, and they're able to do the good job.
And I think your products do a really good job of that. I guess the one good thing for me about something like House of Rags is it gives me something to talk about on my channel and review lots of different stuff and try to help people pick a good place to start and, try this, try that, for this or for that, or try any of these, right? Like it doesn't matter in some cases. So it's kind of fun. So let's switch to the mechanical type things here. And that might even be honestly like a sponge can be mechanical. You're using it in some way, shape, or form. But how do you go about? Is it the same kind of process? It's the same length and time. I'm guessing some of these things could be much longer development times because there's a lot of different pieces. And something that I think a lot of people never think about with products is like the supply chain for all the different parts. Just this one battery. I don't know how many parts are in it, but I bet there's maybe 50 or 60 minimally of different parts that are just in this one battery, plus everything that's inside of one of these things. So how do you go about developing everything from a sponge all the way up to something? This is probably your most complicated thing that you have, I would guess, but like, how do you go about that?
So for the sponges, that was actually fairly easy. So when rinseless washing started, the late 90s, early 2000s, people were using grout sponges. And grout sponges, while they work, they're not the best tool for the job. And then it was, wash mitts. If you've ever used a wool wash mitt with a polymer based rinseless, you'll know just why I developed the sponges. Uh, it's just a horrible feeling. The wash mitt gets like slimy, greasy feeling. It goes black. It's just not a happy situation. So I started working with a company, Lake Country at the time, and I had like 50 foam samples to start with. And some got quickly eliminated, some stayed on. And then, in our shop, we were doing multiple cars every day. So it was very easy to find out when a foam was not good or good. And then, got down to about 5 different foams. And then we, tried them long term. So the development of the first sponge was about 2 years in the making. And I developed that just for my shops. That was the only reason I was developing the sponge, to make my employees' lives or my franchisees' lives easier. But people caught on, and now we have 20 or 30 different companies selling sponges. But the sponge has, as simple as a sponge, it develops over time. There are new foams available. There are new ways of cutting. There are, right now we're testing different packaging to be able to ship them in a vacuum sealed bag so that they take up less space in shipping. But little things like that can make a product better. Right now the big obstacle we have, the technology is there to vacuum pack them, but it would add about for the 50 or 60,000 sponges we do a year, it would add about $1.50 cost to each sponge. And when it costs us $1.50, when we add in the distributors margins, our margins, it ends up costing you $3. So that, you know adding $3 to a sponge just to pack it in a vacuum bag may not be the best alternative. So we're looking for a lower cost way of doing that. When it comes to developing something like the polishers, I started working on the first prototypes 5 years ago. Things transpire in that time. Technology gets better. An example, the battery charger that we have, and actually you have two because you have two machines. So the battery charging the battery technology has improved dramatically over the last 5 or 10 years, but we're able to really boost the charger, meaning that it's an 8 amp charger, which is quite high for a battery charger, but it works in the same principle as an EV or a hybrid or whatever large battery you're wanting to charge, meaning that the first 80%, it is just bombarding that battery with electricity. And when it reaches this almost saturation point, so about 80%, then the charger slows down and feeds it a little slower. So the first 80% of the battery takes about 16 to 18 minutes to charge, depending on your voltage at home. That last 20% might take another 35, 40 minutes. But that first 80% is very fast. And the easiest way I have of explaining it is you have a stadium. On that stadium, no one has reserved seating. So, there's game starts at 7 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, they open the doors. Everyone rushes in like crazy. The first 80% of people are going to find seats rather quickly. So your little electrons are finding a place to lodge themselves in the battery very quickly. When you get to that last 20%, people are still rushing in. Then they're looking around and they see a seat, row 7. They run to it. Someone else has also seen that seat and they sit down before they get there. So they have to go find another spot and another spot. So that last 20% takes a lot longer to fill than the first 80%, because the first 80% you can just flood it and the electrons are going to find somewhere to go. And it slows down. It's not like at exactly at 80%. It's the charger is reading the battery and going, okay, this is starting to take more time. Let me not try to overload it. We're going to slow down a little bit. But roughly about 75 to 80% is very, very quick. Even though each tool comes with 2 batteries, if you can burn out a battery in 20 minutes, you're really trying too hard. So you'll never be without a battery in that case.
Yeah, and that allows you to do a couple different things, I think, too. Like I do a lot of battery stuff on my channel too for overlanding and those types of things. And you're always looking for the right size. You can always get a bigger battery, but I don't want to lug a bigger battery with me out in the middle of nowhere if I don't have to. So charging faster and being smaller is also, that allows you to have a battery that does what you need it to do for an hour, say, like you could run it, but you can then charge this back up in just a few minutes and then keep going while you go and take a break and come back, and you're able to keep working. And with two batteries, you should really never run out anyway, but that's
Yeah.
really helpful for something like that. So yeah, just a great design there too.
Again, we could have gone with a 3 amp hour battery or a 6 amp hour battery or a 10 amp hour battery for that matter. We chose the 5 as a good medium point that gives the tool great balance. The weight isn't too heavy. I see people with the Milwaukee. I have the Milwaukees as well, and Milwaukee you can get I think up to like a 15 amp hour battery. The thing is huge, and you see them
Yep.
polishing with that huge battery on the back of the polisher because they don't want to have to change the battery out in the middle of the job. I rather use a 3 amp hour battery on the Milwaukee and change it out more often, but I'm not carrying around all that weight at the end of the handle. With ours, yeah, we could put a larger battery on it and it's still going to be balanced, but there comes to it's a point of no return. Bigger battery, more weight, you're not going to get more work done because of that large battery, because charging the battery is so fast that you're never going to run out of battery.
And like again, the ergonomics of something like this, that's the whole point of it, is to make it also easier on you and your body, because the balance is so good. And you just putting a bigger battery on here, maybe you can go for longer, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a better experience for you. So
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
The other thing that was important to me with the tool was hand spacing. And a lot of people don't think of ergonomics. Ergonomics is always in the back of my mind. And if you look at some of the other polishers on the market, your hands are so close together that naturally you want to hold the battery because it's uncomfortable to hold your hands, 5 or 6 inches apart. Whereas our cord free tools, the hand spacing is the same as our corded tools. So it's a more natural feeling when you're holding it. You're not too close together. Some companies even go as far as rubber coating their batteries and suggesting that people hold the battery. But what happens when you have to turn the trigger off? You have to let go of the battery, move, so it's not the best, wasn't the best solution. So for me, like I said, I tried battery locations everywhere, and where we ended up is the most logical battery location in terms of ergonomics, in terms of balance, in terms of user comfort. It may not look the best, but people will get used to it, I think.
And you know what? I think because of how well balanced it is, you might start seeing some people trying to copycat some of that stuff in some way, shape, or form too. Now, I don't know if you patented that
Yes.
location, and if you did,
Yeah.
that's great. But we might see some really crazy stuff coming up. Like, what if we put it up on the front instead? Who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows?
Well, we're actually in talks to license the battery location to a few other
That's
companies.
awesome.
So yeah. So hopefully others will adopt it. Yeah. I'd be happy to see every cordless polisher go with the central battery, not because of the patent, but because it just is better for the person using the tool. It's more comfortable, less chance of injury, less chance of scratching the car, and like your truck is rather tall, so you're up on a platform, you're doing the roof, you're leaning over the truck, and if you're just holding on to the battery, it's not exactly the best control of the machine. Whereas if you're holding onto the handle, which is the part closest to you in this case, then it's easy to use. For myself, I generally use the machines one-handed. And with the DA and with the rotary, it's one hand on the black part, so right over the pad. And where the battery is, it allows me that balance. And then if I'm reaching, yes, I'll hold onto the handle. But generally, I'm holding onto the machine by the front part of the machine.
So I think we've learned a lot about your process this evening, and I really appreciate that a lot. And hopefully, the people have found this really interesting. I loved it. It's a different part of detailing that you get to nerd out a little bit with people who love products, and I like
Yeah.
doing that. So yeah, I've enjoyed this talk very much. I guess anything else you want to talk about in and around these polishers, or anything else that's coming out soon that you spent a lot of time and effort developing?
Just for people to get over the looks, because a lot of people's like, oh, I'll never use that. It looks funny. Once you actually put it in your hands and try it, you'll go, aha, okay, now I understand what he's talking about. So, hopefully when you get to polishing with them, you'll have that aha moment. You went and bought these. Ben paid for them; they weren't given to him. So, if you could hit that little subscribe button, right in the bottom of the screen there, you see that little arrow. That's a hint for you to subscribe to Ben's channel, please do. Give him a thumbs up. And when he provides a link, if you're thinking of buying that product, use that link. Sometimes, not every company, but most companies will provide content creators not only a discount code for the user, but also a small commission to the content creator to pay for all of this stuff. So
Yes, and I definitely appreciate that. And thank you so much for calling that out. I appreciate that very much. I'm going to give one sneak peek piece of advice that I absolutely love about this already, that I know is going to be super important for me. And that is, these are quiet.
yes.
These are so quiet. The polisher that I had previously purchased that I used to polish my truck, it was less expensive. But we did that, and I don't remember if you remember the video I did with the Bronco next door to me. We used the polisher on that, and I think everybody was deaf by the end of the day because that thing was just so loud. So that's a preview of coming attractions. These are very quiet, so if you want to save your ears or not have to wear hearing protection, these will definitely be something to look at for sure.
Well, thanks for having me, Ben, and we'll see you in the
Yes.
next one.
Thank you for being on. I really appreciate it, and thank you everybody for joining. And remember, live your life in beta, and we'll see you next time.